Welcome to the Giving Room with Dave and David, where we encourage remarkable generosity, from amazing stories to easy to understand discussions about tools for giving that may just be right for you.
Hey, I'm Dave.
And I'm David.
And welcome to the Giving Room. We are finally delivering on a promise. Back a couple episodes ago, we talked about a tale of two fields, the theology of giving away property. And so we're going to be talking a little bit more, diving into the tools for giving around property donations.
Yeah, and this won't be, so in there was a cautionary tale, and then there was like an encouraging tale. So we had a little bit of a, this is really exciting, and then this is a little terrifying as far as those Bible stories. But this is really just kind of pulling back. It's not going to be like law school. We're not going to go super deep into real property 101 or anything, but we're going to talk about how could we actually give land and all the different things, and then how would we do it.
So grab your cup of coffee, pull up a chair, and we're going to dive in. Let's talk property.
Yeah, well, and it's not just property, right? So it's real property.
So we're not talking about virtual property today, real property?
I knew you were going to do that. No, we're not going into the metaverse or anything like that. This is Can
I donate my NFT in this episode?
Someday. It's like, we'll promise that again. In the future, we'll talk about giving NFTs. But no, so when we talk about property, just from a legal perspective, there's real property, that's real estate, or land, and we'll talk about the different things you can give in that. And then there's personal property. So it's always like real property or personal property. So when we talk about we're going to give property, we are, but just sort of like one type.
We're laser focus in on land and buildings and that sort of houses and that sort of stuff.
So it's about to get real. We're going to talk about real.
I wonder how they stole the word real. Like, how did they claim that? And everyone else just kind of gets shafted with
fake. That's not the thing.
Okay, we're off track here.
Right.
Let's dive. So real property. So giving, again, land, buildings, that sort of stuff.
That's going to be the first thing. We're talking about the types. So what are the types of real estate you can give real property?
Type.
And then timing and tools. Those kind of go together. And it's sort of
Look at that alliteration. Yeah, so good. You can be a preacher.
Maybe. So timing and tools, and then basically the timing of the gift determines the tool. So we'll kind of look at those together. So it's really the two things: the type, and then the timing and tools do that together.
So let's dive in first here. We're talking types of real estate,
right?
Or types of real property,
right? It means the same thing, right? It's the same thing. And I just wanted to kind of run through this because the first thing a lot of people think about is, well, this is my house, right? This is where I live. It's my personal residence, and that is definitely true. So when we get into the tools and the timing, your house, your personal residence is definitely one of those things, but it goes beyond that. I mean, and first, when we talk about personal residence, that may be a house, right? Or that could be a condo, right? It could be, a piece of a house attached to other houses, right? So both of those are options. Those are two different types. And then some folks have a second home or a vacation home. That would count. So that's a type of real property that you could give. Others have rentals, and that could be, a house, and it could be something that's like an Airbnb or just a rental. You could actually have like an apartment building, or even everything from a duplex to, an actual building with multiple units in it. So owning that as real estate, or a commercial building, which is everything from, a storage unit place to, a factory or even just some business building. So all of those things are different types. And then in addition to that, we've got vacant lots or vacant land. So you can just actually get, land itself is real estate. And then sometimes land itself is a farm. So that's that usually has a little bit of both, right? It may have residents on it, may have something like some commercial structures, and also the land itself.
And you could even donate a piece of your land. You don't have to donate all of it, right?
Right. You could actually, cut it up and give some acres instead of all the acres, right? Yeah. So that's really the type. So I just wanted, listeners to think, okay, it's not just my house. I may have more. It may be something that you have more in the future, but at least know that these are things that you could give, at least considering.
Well, and part of the power of giving this, and I mean, I know we're going to dive into timing and tools, right, is just real estate in general, depending on the season and the political climate. There can often be a lot of different tax implications with property. As well, right? And then these are talking major, large dollar amounts we're dealing with most of the time.
Yeah.
And so that's part of why considering this is so important. So let's talk a little bit. We've kind of gone through the types. Let's dive a little bit into tools and timing.
Yeah. Well, and we'll just set this framework.
Yeah.
When we've talked about plan giving, I think in the very first episode and some of those after, we said that there's ways to give today, and then there's ways to give tomorrow. And, tomorrow is sometimes like tomorrow, but usually tomorrow is just like some point in the future. And then there's a few once in a lifetime gifts. We haven't talked much about that. Yeah. One of the once in a lifetime gifts is real estate. And the only reason we talk about it that way is it's just most folks that have given real estate tend not to do it multiple times unless you happen to be, you are like a developer and you have lots and lots of real estate. Yeah. Like the average person is probably giving real estate once in their lifetime. So then the question just becomes, am I going to give that today? Can I just give it to charity today? Or am I going to do it sometime tomorrow? Again, probably way out in the future or at some point that I don't know. Mm-hmm. But that's really the timing. And then that timing issue is going to determine the tool that we use to actually give it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So today, this is probably the easiest thing, right? And this is no different than if I sold my house. It really just takes, a new deed, right?
Right.
You just have a new deed created. Probably need a lawyer. It's probably a good thing to do. There's sites where you can do it online, but probably need a lawyer. Legal descriptions, how you describe the property matters. When you go to record that, this is a process of taking it to the county where you live, and they accept it, so it has to be right. But it's really just a deed, and you can actually just sign your house over to your favorite charity. And for the charity, you probably have to make sure your charity's ready for that. And so this is sort of like the sidebar for charities. You probably may want to think about getting ready for that. And what's that mean? That probably means you need some sort of a gift acceptance policy, right? That says whether you can take a gift of real estate. Right. And then what are you going to do with it when you get it? Do you need it, for a new building or a new site, or are you going to try and actually sell it and use the proceeds? What are you going to do as the charity? As a charity, you may actually also want it to, that the donor is going to pay for a phase 1 environmental study. That's just sort of, was there, a gas station here, 50 years ago, and we don't know, especially if it's a vacant land situation. Just depends on where it is. For, residential real estate, probably not an issue. For any of the other things, could be an issue. Yeah. Farmland for sure is an issue. Yeah. All the commercial things. And then, maybe even an indemnification agreement. Again, this is the sidebar for the charities themselves. Like, what do you need to think about? And when you say indemnification, not just like liability, but sort of like the carrying costs liability. So when I give my land or my house or my commercial building to charity, now in most places they'll be tax exempt. So they eventually won't pay real estate taxes, but there's a process. So they may pay a little. So you may want to say, donor, thank you for the building, but could you actually cover those costs, any real estate taxes that we have to pay till we don't have to pay them. And then even like insurance and some of the other things. So those are just things that the charities need to think about.
So one thing, so I guess sidebar 2 is if you're interested in doing this donation, definitely talk to the charity in advance and make sure they're prepared for this kind of gift. Right. So, there's a lot of preparation here. We want to make sure that they're ready to go and have thought through all those implications. And a lot of charities do have an attorney who can help them through that. Not all of them, but that is something to be, this is a more complex thing. So we want to make sure that the charity you want to give it to is ready for it.
Yeah. And so they would know what to do. Yeah. And most of the time it isn't going to be, we need this land for a specific, second site or new site or new home for the charity. Most of the time, they're actually going to sell it. And this actually brings in some of the tax advantages, right? So when you have real property that you've owned for more than a year, then, and when you go to sell that, there's potential capital gains tax, right? So, if I bought it for, let's make it really easy. If I bought it for $100,000 and now, it's worth, $250,000, I'd pay tax on that $150,000 of what we'd call capital gain. Well, when I give it to the charity, I get a deduction for the $250,000, and nobody pays tax on the capital gain.
Well, and especially in the last, about 10, 15 years, I mean, housing has just been skyrocketing nationally. I know here in Columbus, it's still going up with just the demand for housing. So you can see these property values that inflate, which could also deeply affect your capital gains taxes.
Yeah, it's true. Especially so whether you have family or heirs, and you're just trying to do something with this property. This is something to at least think about. But like you said, you probably have to make sure it's a charity that knows what to do with it and could actually process it. Yeah. But and then that last piece, I said the deduction is the fair market value. That takes a qualified appraisal, and that's just a fancy term from the IRS that just says that it can't be Billy Bob's House of Appraisal, or I don't know, some that's really offensive.
Somewhere a little bit
right. No offense to anybody named Billy or Bob in that scenario, but you have to actually have somebody who, does this and knows what the IRS wants when they say qualified appraisal. And it just means thorough, basically, right?
Yeah.
Thorough and reliable. And then that's what you would base your deduction on. And it's sort of your responsibility as the donor to do that. But that's how you do it. It's just a simple deed.
Right.
Not really hard from a tool perspective, just all these considerations.
So, what are some scenarios where I should consider property donations? Like, why would I do that? And I realize, obviously, every family situation is different. Sometimes you have kids, sometimes you don't. If you have no one to leave it to in mind, that makes this a much more interesting scenario. But even if you have kids, walk me through some of these scenarios.
Let me give you an example. Yeah. So I actually had this was an airplane ride once, and I was next to this gentleman, and he actually was on the board of a seminary somewhere in the Southeast. And we just started talking about different things. And, he had shared that they had, I think it was a house somewhere along the Florida Panhandle that was a vacation home. And because I've done this for a really long time, I just kind of asked him. I already knew they had some kids because we were talking about it, some adult kids. My kids weren't quite there yet at the time. And I just said, I think they had three kids. And I said, well, what are you going to do with that vacation home? What are you and your wife going to do with that? Are your kids interested? And he goes, well, it's really interesting. He goes, I've got one son who's been like super, super successful. They actually already have their own vacation home. They like never ever come. And he goes, I've got one guy who would like it, but he's never going to be able to afford it. Like he could never actually pay the real estate taxes, the upkeep. It's just never, even if we helped on the back end there, it's just never going to be a thing for him. He'd end up losing it. And then I have another that's just like not interested at all. Doesn't ever want to go, has no interest. It's like, so I got one doing their own thing, one who would like it, but can't. And what I found is like, that is, you have a better than 50-50 shot that's sort of like real for a lot of people that have vacation homes. They, even the wealthiest of families, the kids probably have their own thing. So you got this asset that nobody wants or nobody could want, right? Because of their circumstances. So that's a perfect example. I actually asked him, and this is a great segue. You didn't even know this. One of the tomorrow gift opportunities is actually called a life estate. Okay. So you can actually kind of give it now, but keep a life estate. And that's more jargon, but it basically means I'm gonna sign a new deed that retains a life estate. So I'm gonna give it to the charity, but I'm gonna say for the rest of our lives, in the case of a husband and wife, we get to live here. So it's kind of all of ours, right? You've got what we call a remainderman, like who gets it when you die. But then you've kept it for a life estate. And I just said, have you ever thought about that? Or, have you thought about actually putting it in your will or trust, to just go to your seminary, upon the second death after you and your wife have both passed? And he's like, no. He's like, but these are great ideas. And I was like, well, do you guys have a vice president of advancement or development? He's like, yeah, but he knows all this. He's never brought why hasn't he told me? And I said, I don't know. You should go fire him right now. I don't, maybe not. I did say that, but I don't think he did. So we're not. But
it was a good learning opportunity for the development director.
That's the thing, right? So there's this asset. Yeah. They actually don't know what to do with it. So having the conversation shouldn't be a stressful conversation.
Right.
Whether you're the donor, just approaching it with, your favorite charity or ministry and just say, hey, I've got this thing. It's not going to go to a family or there isn't family and we need to figure out what to do with it. We'd like to still enjoy it. So maybe that is where the life estate thing works. Or we're just going to make sure it's in our trust, to go to you, favorite charity, whenever we pass. So so that's like one of the examples.
Yeah.
With farms now, it's like more and more the thing where, either, a lot of times farmland's actually just being sold, right, to some like larger corporate farming operation. But a lot of times the next generation isn't into farming. It's sort of like a problem for like farming families. So farmland becomes a thing. And that may actually be a case where you want to talk to a, local government, even like city, county, state, and see if you could actually turn it into a preserve, right? Or there's like an organization called the Trust for Public Land. They kind of do that. They'll accept gifts and they'll they'll turn it into like a park, for all time. So there's lots of things to think about. Yeah. And so that becomes, just some of the scenarios.
Well, that, and again too, if you're converting, if in an area like here, right, where there's tons of farmland being commercially developed, where you may decide, hey, they want to turn my farm into a neighborhood. I don't have to give, I can give some of it and I can sell some of it right? I mean, that would be an option as well, where you can essentially, especially we've talked a little bit about donor advised funds already, right? You could potentially donate real estate to fund some of that, right?
Yep.
And kind of help me understand.
We've talked about
scenario.
National Christian Foundation,
Right.
and they are a charity. I think we did one episode on donor advised funds specifically, and one episode on them sort of as like a charity.
Yeah.
So you can actually give them your real estate. You have to, again, work with it. You can't just like hand them the done deal deed, but like work with them on it. And then once they sell and liquidate the land, that money will end up in your donor advised fund. Then you can use that money to support other charities. And again, you never paid capital gains tax on it. So if you did have farmland and then it's skyrocketed in value because either the city's come into there or there's been like, some large announcement of some major employer manufacturer that's coming into the area. Yeah. And that actually may be why you don't want to be there anymore too, right? So it's just a chance to, leverage some of that acreage for something else.
That's what's going on in the community I live in right now is, where this giant, massive facility is coming in and all of these farmers are figuring out, what are we going to do? It's interesting to see how that's all, neighborhoods are going in. I mean, all these houses are going into commercial now. Everything's being rezoned. I mean, it's crazy. And this is a scenario where, again, you can sell some of it, you can donate some of it. There's a lot of options there as you consider, and then another example would be, I guess, downsizing, right? Would there be some examples in there where you might consider something?
I mean, sometimes it just depends on if you don't need the property, so I know, folks that have actually bought their downsized house and hadn't even, sold their other house yet. Right. Right. And so what are we going to do with that? Do we need the proceeds? Well, we just bought a house. We may not need it. But then, we may. Okay. So what do we do with that house? Yeah. So you could do the same thing. You could, sell it. You could give it to National Christian Foundation, give it to your favorite charity and kind of work from there. But I think all of those things are the scenario. I think when you don't have children or you've got a second piece of property or even your main property that children wouldn't be interested in. And that applies to even commercial buildings. So I know long time ago in Cleveland, we worked with a gentleman who had just sort of amassed a bunch of apartments, sort of like the, 10 to 20 unit apartment buildings older all across Cleveland. And every time there was a major capital campaign, he basically just gave one of those buildings away because he didn't have any family. And it was just a way of sort of reducing his estate and also using, this asset because he had them for a really long time, there would have been significant capital gains if he sold them. And he didn't really need the money. So he just used it to fund some of the organizations that he was passionate about. So it just became a super cool thing in a way of just sort of downsizing and simplifying his life. But
and I know that's been a thing I've seen. I've run into a number of actually River supporters recently who are in the rental business. They have a lot of rental homes in a community or neighborhood too. And that would be another piece of that, where one of the gentlemen I was talking to he's like, I have 100 rentals. And it's overbearing. I'm tired, and I was thinking about selling them, and and he was kind of batch selling them, and 25 homes to this guy and 10 homes to this guy that were also in the rental business. And I said, have you considered donating a few of these? Funding, again, a charitable account for you to give over time, or maybe thinking through that option as well. We had a really good conversation on that, because especially if you're in that line of business, there can be some really good tax advantages. And because he was trying to figure out how to deal with all the taxes as he was selling massive amounts of real estate, as he was trying to kind of get out of the rental business or reduce it significantly to only a handful of houses.
Yeah. Well, and that's the point. I think, even somebody who is charitably minded, and back to the reason why we do this, right? And when I talk about this as a Tools for Giving episode, it's just it's an issue awareness thing. We just want folks to know this is actually something you could do, and pretty regular people could do this, right? Yeah. So a lot of folks have houses, and there's a lot of folks who don't have kids, or they have kids that have gone off to do something else, doing their own thing. That story where, my kids are already, it's kind of the American dream thing, right? You want your kids to be able to go do better than you. So a lot of times there isn't a need or an interest in a family for, even if it was a family home. So what do you do with it? And sometimes giving it away is a great thing if those assets aren't needed, to take care of that, that couple. So it's just something to think about.
Awesome. Well, as we wrap things up here, anything else that we need to talk about?
No, just all those different types. And then, when do you want to do it? Do you want to give it now? You want to give it later? one of the ways to do it later is just actually through your will or trust. I guess one point. So if we did do that life estate thing, which is kind of a cool thing, not a ton of people do it. When you do that, you do tie some strings around the property because the remainderman's got some interest. There's some states that have allowed for some flexibility here, so you just have to kind of check where you live.
Right.
But generally, you couldn't refinance without the blessing of the remainderman. You couldn't borrow money against it. Generally, you couldn't actually sell it either without the permission of the remainderman because they think they're going to get it right when you die. So you just got to be certain that you want to do that. Contrast it to if you did just have a gift in your will, where you just have to describe it in particular. It can even just be the address, and whether it's all of it or part of it. You can change your mind, right? Until you die, you can change your will. So that's a way to, create that. And the same with your trust. In the trust, you probably transfer it into the trust. But you're the trustee of the trust so long as you're alive. So you can kind of do with it whatever you want. You can still sell it. You can transfer it. So there's maybe more flexibility on the will or trust thing if it's a tomorrow gift.
Right.
But doesn't mean that the life estate's not a bad thing. It may be the perfect scenario.
And there's probably some decent scenarios too, again, where you're really involved in a charity and you want to make that known before you die, right? I mean, not that you can still notify them that you're putting it in your trust, but you may want those strings attached because you care deeply. You want them to know that, and you want to partner with them on that, or even let them somewhat use it and feel like there's some ownership there, right?
Yeah. Well, on the life estate thing, you actually do get a deduction. If you just put it in your will or trust, there's no deduction. There's an estate deduction later when you die, but you can actually get a deduction now for the life estate gift. It's basically the value. It's the present value of the future gift. So this is a little geeky on the math side, but there is a deduction for it.
Well, and again, you can hire someone to help you figure out the geeky math stuff. But ultimately, the goal here is to really consider this, because again, like we've talked about with stocks, like we've talked about, there are other assets that you have that can have significant tax advantages to allow you to give more. Rather than just giving cash. And real estate's one of those great things to do, whether it's once in a lifetime or it's an additional property you're dealing with right now. Those are all things you should consider if you're wanting, again, as you're trying to be generous.
All right. So did we keep it real?
I think we kept it real.
That's really dumb.
It was.
Anyway,
so thanks for hanging out with us here in the Giving Room. Again, as we talk through the type and the timing and the tools of giving real estate. And again, I hope that this has been helpful for you as you think through all these things, and maybe even for down the road, something to consider. Or if you know someone who's battling with this right now, share this episode. And we're also happy to talk to you more. You can learn more. You can get in touch with us as well at givingroompodcast.com. Again, make sure you listen, subscribe where you listen. Make sure you like it. We do accept positive reviews as well. But also, if you're listening, you could watch us at River Now on YouTube. Or if you're watching, you may want to consider listening. It might be a better experience.
That may be better, actually.
But we're so thankful you're hanging out with us in the Giving Room. And we look forward to touching base with you and seeing you again soon.
The Giving Room podcast is brought to you by Giving Design LLC, where we help ministries and their donors utilize planned giving to change the world. Go to givingdesign.com to learn more. As always, a huge thank you to River Radio Ministries for sponsoring and producing this podcast. Go to riverradio.com to listen or learn more.